unless you have a multi-billion-dollar Disney behind you.
Hello, and welcome to the Tidbit Cast. My name is Gary, and this is
Colm.
That's Colm. Buttery smooth. And we're just moaning into the microphones now.
But it sounds good.
We've become a different kind of channel.
Yeah.
It's been a while, guys.
This is a late night podcast. Sort of.
For all you late nighters.
Night owls, as you like to be known.
I was going to say night walkers.
No.
For all you night walkers out there.
On your boulevards of broken dreams.
This is the Tidbit Cast, where we pick a topic and we talk about whichever we like to talk about. And this week we had a kind of double topic, and then we had one with between David and Aaron, and then Columns, and so now we're doing an extra one. So now it means that all of us have done a topic this week, which actually has been a first for a while.
Yeah, it's been quite a while for that. About a month.
So I think we're going to get into this. This topic is going to be my topic, which is why I am here. Colm and I are in our remote locations. We have the setup done.
Remote locations. It makes it sound like I'm in Siberia. He's very cold.
We're here at opposite ends of the country. Country.
Alright, fine, whatever.
Yes, I win.
Proceed.
Okay, so I was just fiddling with my mic again, just because it's fun and technology. Oh, yes. I think we've kind of worked out the kinks of what we're doing. Now, let's get actually onto the topic.
Okay, fire away. What is the topic for today, Gary? Please enlighten me.
Right, so what I want to talk about is I want to talk about release dates, because release dates have been changing for certain properties. The one that has come out that makes me want to, has that in my head, is Days Gone. Days Gone has changed its release date, whereas it used to be February 22nd, and it's been delayed. And the reason why it was delayed, I'm not entirely sure on, but that's not what I wanted to talk about.
Surprise. February 22nd.
Sparked it. February 22nd, which is also the date that we're going to be getting Anthem, February 22nd, 2019, and also Metro Exodus.
Yes.
We're going to be getting 3 games, 3 big, pretty much AAA titles in the same day. And yeah, I imagine that probably one of the reasons why they might have been delayed was, I imagine planning-wise, they want to release on the same time as 2 of the games, especially Anthem, which is one of those games that's going to take up most of the media space for that week, if not month.
You kind of have to expect that, though. I mean, with mainstream games, look, Anthem is obviously a third-person shooter. No, there's no other way of putting it. As far as I can tell, it's a third-person shooter. Was it Metro? You said, yeah, Metro first-person shooter. I'm kind of surprised they're sticking with their guns and they're going to stay on that date, to be honest, considering they still have plenty of time to delay their product. But
I don't know if Metro's going to do it. I think it might do it just because of the scale of their project. Again, it's not a huge project, but it's because the quality of their games is usually very, very good. So if they delay them, I imagine it's only because they want it to look good. They want it to feel good.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of game they are. I mean, the first game came out, and the big surprise about that game is that there wasn't a hood. And you had to turn on the hood when you played the game. And it did not really change the game. It was supposed to be kind of realistic telling, and it was different for a lot of games there. So it seems like they're in the way of wanting to make it an interesting piece, rather than just, we're trying to get as much as we can. I think they're just kind of trying to make enough.
Yeah, but would you change your date if you knew you were up against Red Dead Redemption, for example?
Red Dead Redemption is kind of different.
How so?
Because, dear God, we know how huge that is. And Anthem is a big game, and it's being pushed, but it's not as if it's a sequel. It is coming from a studio that's well renowned with BioWare, and them coming back with the same team that worked on the Mass Effect 1 and 2 franchise. So obviously, there's a pedigree there. There's a pedigree. The people who worked on the Mass Effect, the people who worked on Dragon Age, we're getting the people who were like OG.
Storytellers.
OG.
Yeah, the storytellers. Getting their storytellers back. And that's all I ever care about in games. The storytelling.
Yeah, the same writers. Yeah. Those are the writers that made us care about the characters that really started off that studio. Yeah. And really got that studio off the ground and running. And that is exciting, but it is also the first in a franchise. Well, possible franchise. But it is the first game. So I don't know if it's not exactly going to be as big as like Red Dead Redemption, which also... Yeah, Red Dead Redemption, the first game, yeah, that was a big enough game. And then you have GTA 5, the biggest game ever.
Pretty much, ever. I was at a talk with Stephen Ogg, and he was talking about the game, and I won't spend too much time on it, but he was talking about the game, and he was pretty happy. Like he said, he was a guy that never played games before, and he seemed pretty smug with himself that the game that he gave his voice to ended up being the best-selling game of all time, or the biggest game of all time. So I mean, it's a world in its own, to be honest.
And continues to be. I mean, that game is 5 years old now at this point, and it is still, if you look at it every time, like when was it? I think it was August, I want to say, but I believe August it was the #1 best-selling game on PS4.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I genuinely am not surprised, considering that first of all, August was a slow month for PS4. Second of all,
yeah,
GTA 5 is a behemoth, and it was also on sale in August, if I recall. It was 60% off or something like that, or it was 60%, as far as I remember.
Yeah, Steam as well.
Yeah.
But after 5 years, that game is still going strong, with its strongest months being in the last year.
Yeah,
it's had its strongest sales in last year. In 5 years, it's incredible for a game and having the life that it has. And just continuing on from getting back to the topic release dates, we kind of went off a bit. We were talking about Rockstar, because it's very easy to trail off when we talk about Rockstar. With Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out, it's a sequel to a game, and then coming off of GTA 5, one of the biggest games. Obviously, that studio is in the limelight, and that studio, any property they do make, if it's going to be a sequel or an original property or anything it's going to do, that shit's going to be huge. And there's a reason why. Because them, like, knowing coming off of GTA Online, just imagine the online for Red Dead Redemption 2, coming off what they've learned from that. Imagine how they're going to start this off.
Well, hopefully they'll start this off with better servers.
Yeah. So the promise of this game is gigantic, coming off of what's come before, because now it feels like they're at a place where this game is going to turn out just right. The first game was handled very well. The online was an interesting.
It was adequate. It was perfectly adequate.
Yeah. It had its kinks and it had its flaws, but it was very fun to run around in an open world in the gang. And now it just seems like, imagine what they can take from GTA 5 online and mash it into this world.
Yeah.
God, it's going to be so good. And all the impressions we've had of this game that we've had so far, they've perfectly just placed it where they've not told us that much. Whenever they do tell us something, you see that video climb to 8 million views in a few days. There's a reason why, because there's so less of it to have.
Yeah, it seems pretty interesting, but in fairness, we could probably, I probably will at some point, do a podcast on Red Dead Redemption 2. Because it is a sinkhole. Rockstar is a sinkhole that we must escape, Gary. What were we talking about?
So let's escape that, as you're saying, and go back to the topic.
Yeah.
Because, so with the upcoming release date of Red Dead Redemption 2,
No!
it has become its own sinkhole.
Yeah.
Where anything that's coming out at the same time has just, like, delayed or been pushed. For example, Call of Duty being the big one of... They've always released in October.
I can't, like, that's the one thing I can't believe. I can't believe they played a game of chicken with Call of Duty, and they got Call of Duty to blink. You know?
Late October for years. I think it's been about 5-6 years since Call of Duty has not been in October. Yeah. They've been in the same release date for years.
There must be an obvious reason to that. There must be a marketing reason. Obviously, because I say it's close to Christmas, but it's not too close that it's a brand spanking new game. It's close enough that people can buy the present for their kids. That's what I'm assuming, anyway.
Other ones being stuff like Battlefield.
Yeah.
Which had a big thing where they said they're going to delay it by a month, which means that it's going to be weeks after Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out. It's going to be in November. Call of Duty obviously already out, and that game did very well, but also people are starved a little bit at this point because there's not a huge amount of games coming out, or these big ones, AAA. So when that came out, it was going to do very well, but obviously they were not going to go anywhere near fucking Red Dead because if they did, it could be destroyed. And then there's the release date I want to go off. Like, if we were looking at 3 games that were coming out for February 22nd, 2019, it's a similar situation to going a year prior to the release date of Red Dead Redemption, which is October 26th, 2018, is October 26th, 2017, where you had Assassin's Creed Origins, Wolfenstein 2, New Colossus, and Super Mario Odyssey, all on the same day.
Odyssey, you say?
And
sorry.
And Assassin's Creed Origins being, yeah, I know. Assassin's Creed Origins being, at that time, it was the best received Assassin's Creed in terms of sales. In terms of commercial success, it did really well. I mean,
it did. It did. I'm very, very happy with it because it got us Odyssey, and I am very happy with Odyssey. This is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, not Mario Odyssey. Just to be clear.
They said they're going to be doing Origins, and then me and Mother was like, "We have to compete.
We must compete.
We must compete." And so that day we had these giant games, and also like Origins obviously like did very well because I remember seeing the thing of the average was that you had, what was it, like 55,000 people playing at one time, or like the figures.
That's very good for a game.
And that's very good
for a single player game.
Coming off Odyssey also has beaten that with like 60-something thousand, 62,000 or something.
The argument there though is obviously Anthem and
it's a year later,
but they're different. Oh, first of all, yeah, it's a year later, but second of all, they're completely different games. You know, that's the kicker, and they're almost Ubisoft to a certain degree is almost not necessarily a flagship of. Not a flagship, but definitely they're top tier enough that even Xbox and PS4 consider them a staple on their consoles. But where you come to Mario, I mean, Mario's on Switch. Brilliant device.
Yep.
But again, it's not competitive. You know, they're not I don't mean it's not competitive against the other consoles. I mean, Origins wasn't necessarily competing against Odyssey. You know.
No, it's impossible for them to compete against each other unless people have 2 of the consoles that you would play them on. They're just different audiences, and so it means that you'd have to be in a completely different mood to play either of those games. Sure. Mario is a game about it's a game about going to different worlds and exploring and having these cool characters.
Hey, don't knock Origins till you try it. Cute little characters are all in there. Yeah.
but I'm not going to go into Super Mario if I want to go behind somebody and slit their neck. I will do that in Origins.
I admit it though. You would love to see Mario with an assassin's blade doing the eagle dive off a building into a haystack. It'd be hilarious.
I would love to see Mario get a bow and arrow and shoot into somebody's head.
Okay, that's a bit dark. Okay, that's going a bit too far, but okay. Well, we know where you're.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? This bit, it's just
hole in one.
It's like celebrating
Mario's archery, murdering Koopas.
Do you remember Link's crossbow training in the Wii? It's like that, but Mario
and live targets,
just destroying skulls. Oh my god! Yeah. And then you have Wolfenstein, which is again a narrative-heavy, single-player focused action game.
If I'm being honest, that went very under the radar for me. To be honest, no, obviously
it went under the radar for a lot of people. Actually, that series I think is actually quite underrated. Where that it has some of the best like actual narrative that you'll see in many games, but it's always seen as like kind of a shitty
it's also seen as someone who hasn't played it, so I'm kind of a layman on it. It's seen to me as a joke game from a distance. You know, you get to go kill Nazis in a dystopian future. That's genuinely what it seems like. And unless you play it and you witness the story and you experience the story, I don't think you're going to actually... You probably have to play the first one to get you hooked enough to play the second one. Unless it's on sale.
Well, the second one literally starts seconds after the first one.
So it would help.
So yeah, it would help. I don't think you have to, but it would do that. The game is just... The voice actors are good enough in the game. How about this? Wolfenstein, the newest rebooted series, one from 2015, and then going off of that, the one that came out in 2017, made the character of B.J. Blazkowicz one of the best written characters in games. Whereas beforehand, B.J. Blazkowicz was just a character portrait of a face.
Yeah, he was a Duke Nukem.
It's exactly, he was Duke Nukem. He was a guy, you just saw the gun and you would see his face on the bottom, and every so often he would get injured and his face would go, Ugh! And that was all you knew. And it made him one of the best written characters of the last few years. It is incredible how the game, like even from a gameplay perspective, and that in the game what happened, like during one part of it, he has trouble with his heart. And then later on, when they finally fix it, and like he's got at the same time he gets over some emotional issues, he has a surgery that relieves him of the heart difficulties.
It's a metaphor.
It's basically a metaphor, and it's a metaphor that is a part of the character's psyche and mental health and his personality, where he basically gets over a hump. And he starts to get right on track. And it affects the story because of that, because of the revolution that's going on, and him being the leader. And it changes the gameplay, because now half the health bar was covered. And now because your heart is there, you actually have more health because of that.
Yes.
That is just a triple threat there, and that game just does so many right things throughout it.
The only wrong thing it did was picking October 26th.
I think it's just the kind of game it was, because the first game also went under the radar. Yeah. I think it's just a series that kind of went under the radar because they're quite short, they're known for being difficult. The combat isn't actually the best, it's just really fun.
Yeah, I've heard that the stealth takedowns aren't necessarily stealthy, as opposed to just brutal.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how stealthy you're being, you'll always be seen in that fucking game. It's impossible. But even easy is difficult. You'll die in easy a good few times. It's a difficult game to play, and there's a reason why if you go into difficulties and you go into like the later ones, it actually just like if you press easy in that game, it actually just puts your character. It shows your character's like portrait at the beginning. You know, it says like easy, hard, and then like swords and skulls start appearing on it. In this one, it just like shows BJ Blazkowicz with a suitor or a sucker, a baby sucker.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, yeah. It mocks you.
Yeah, it mocks you heavily for doing that. It's that game is fun, and the characters are one of the best parts of that game. The ensemble work really well together. Their histories, even the hub world where you go around asking them, and there are like side missions you can do with them. There are choices depending on the character, which again is incredible to me. That at the beginning of the game you get to choose between two people, and depending on that you have basically two different voice actors across two different games, given two completely different performances based on the choice you do, and that is still kind of incredible for me. That for an entire game I had the choice between like a young unsure private and then a seasoned Scottish veteran.
Who wouldn't pick Billy Connolly?
But I had the choice between the two of those guys, completely different characters, who are nothing alike, and it's just I am tempted to play that game again just to see what the difference in those two, because I don't know how I can imagine their stories differently, because one of them is so ingrained, and like the seasoned guy has like these terrible flashbacks and stuff like that, and I'm just imagine this other guy just a fresh private. So
I bet you nobody picked him.
Probably not. I mean, the other guy was so good. But it was the promise of like a young boy rather than a dude in his 50s.
It was the promise of a young boy.
Please. Oh yeah, that's cold open material right there.
Give that a clap.
So that's it is. Yeah, release dates are one of those things that I don't think are important.
I think they're important for shareholders, and they're important for gamers to get hype. I don't necessarily mind if they say to me, it's been delayed by a month or been delayed by 2 months, but I would like to know the ballpark area where it's going to come out. I would definitely not like to be surprised by a game coming out. I would not like to not know a game is coming out. If, for whatever reason, I suddenly, only today, found out that Red Dead Redemption 2 has been out for the last week, I wouldn't be very impressed. I would feel cheated in some way.
So what I mean by that is release dates. So when a game is talked about, same with movies kind of, but they're two different industries. But with games and films, release dates are the first thing that's planned, and then the actual thing is planned, the actual film. So they actually start planning the release date of it, and then they start planning the actual script.
Think that's correct. I think
correct.
That's only correct in franchises. I think. From someone who's
as far as I know,
I think only franchises necessarily do that.
Is it only franchises in film? I know that in games that was it. I wasn't sure if that was based off that as well.
Because it can be very difficult to get I won't go too far into it, but it can be very difficult to get a movie out on schedule unless you have a multi-billion-dollar Disney behind you. So, like, obviously there are if a film's filmed back to back, like the Lord of the Rings, it's happy days. Like, yeah, you can release that every year at Christmas. But when you have to make individual stuff, it can be very, very difficult to keep to a schedule like that. You can't. You physically can't expect that. Like, an actor's not going to break their leg and have to fucking wait about 3 months for them to heal before they can do that stunt scene.
So the things with games is that they decide on the release schedule, the release date, before they actually decide on what they're going to be working on. That's what they decide on first. It depends on the studio, obviously. You can take your time with it, like Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, well, Rockstar have clout.
Rockstar does.
So, I mean, they do what they want.
Yeah, I mean, Take-Two, for example, like, Take-Two are pretty happy with waiting until Rockstar come out with one because Take-Two know they're going to get their return.
But going back to Ubisoft had a terrible reputation for trying to go a game a year. Assassin's Creed a year. And it really didn't do them any favors. It almost killed the franchise completely.
Yeah, there's a reason why they took a year off to think about what they're doing, and then kind of changed the game.
Well, they completely changed it. I mean, I won't go into it, but it's just they're kind of a cautionary tale in regards to working to a deadline. That's, you know, you can make an okay game if you have a year to make it. You can make a great game if you give yourself an extra 3 months or 6 months, you know, and you don't have to worry about.
Yeah,
but I think is that what you're trying to say in regards to?
Kind of. It's also the thing that with games, it's also much harder to set a release date because games are harder to make than films.
Yes, they are.
Or like most.
Well, it's a different kettle of fish, but yes, they are.
Yeah, because imagine with a film, you can obviously bring in a different editor, and you can kind of figure it out. But here's the difference between a game. I don't know if I can explain this right, but I know some kind of analogy is, for example, imagine you had like a line of code, and that is that there's a poet, okay, and he basically writes a bit of a poem, and then you have to have, while they're doing that poem, you know, obviously they have what the poem is based on, everything that's been proceeding up to, and they've been working on it for like a year or so. Then you bring on a new person to work on that poem to finish it, but it's like it's a poem, it's a personal thing. So then you have to figure out what the original intention of the poem was, where they're going with it, and the journey that it went up to, and then try and work on it. It's not a thing where you can just bring on new people. That's why with games, if you bring on somebody to work on the code or program something after somebody else, it will take them probably about 3 months to figure out what the last person was working on until they can be brought up to speed. It takes months to just be brought back up to speed and being trained on what the current property is. Even if it's an indie game, even if it's a small property, it will take months for a new person to figure out what actually they have to do until they can start. It takes them months to just be trained up to the point that they're able to start doing their own work, because it's so complicated. And imagine doing that with thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of code to work on, millions of letters and spaces and initials. It's a very, very difficult process, and you could probably just bring in unused footage and have an editor crack out a film, and it might turn out somewhat alright, but a game is different, much different. With that, you can't just add people in.
Do you not think that that's not necessarily the rule, insofar as you know, that isn't going to consistently happen, and that people should work to deadlines? Because if you're not working to a deadline, you kind of slack off. So I mean, that in that regard, release dates are kind of good, because they give you an objective, even if you can't reach that objective.
Yeah, but
now obviously some game companies are dicks, and they will poorly treat their workforce. And they'll think that, because it's easy to just, you know, get someone else in to do the job, when it clearly isn't. And they'll end up costing themselves more in the long run. And I'd say that's how a lot of companies just kind of go kaput.
Yeah, because the thing about games is that the average time for a game to be completed is 4 years, which is a long time for somebody to work on a game. And that means you usually have to bring in new talent, which means you have to have a few months added to the schedule, or, you know, by the side to do that, which usually isn't viable to just have somebody being trained for months and not be part of the team. So usually once that person goes, they will bring in a new person.
Fun fact, while we're talking about the time it takes to actually make a game, at this talk I was at with Stephen Ogg, he said he was expected, or he thought he'd be needed for 1 year to do all the mocap, to do all the voice recordings and things like that. Now, this is obviously he's not writing code, he's not doing anything like that. He's just, one of the pieces, the moving pieces. They had him for 3 years. Yeah. On and off. Like, obviously, basically on call. They were like, oh, well, we'll shoot in fall, or we're shooting sometime in fall. We don't know when yet, but you can't do anything because we're doing this. And he wasn't being paid to sit in his ass. He had to go look for different work, which he said was very, very frustrating that they weren't. Obviously, GTA 5, massive game, so it was quite difficult for him to find other work while doing that. But I think it's just there are a lot of moving pieces in games. I think there are a lot more moving pieces in games than there are in films that people don't really realize.
Like,
people think it's easy because a game, if a game has a 20-hour campaign, people think that obviously, people must have put in, I don't know, about 3 months into this, 4 months, 5 months.
Let me give you an example. I believe Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
So working off Star Wars Battlefront 1, going into Star Wars Battlefront 2, it took them 2-3 years. 120 people, I think.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people working on a single property.
It is. Now, that's obviously, I know, just in comparison, film crews would be actually that big as well, post and pre-scheduling.
But then also going off the framework of another game.
Yeah, they didn't have to build it from scratch even.
They used the Frostbite engine, which has been used several times, and they built it in the same style of a Battlefield game, but in a Star Wars universe. So they've been working off the framework of an engine that's been there for the better part of almost a decade, and it still took them.
Which makes things easier each time you use it, I suppose.
Yeah, but it meant that, for example, even people saying that they're going to be doing a story mode, and they had like 2.5 years to do that. And the story mode that they come up with was basically kind of just recycled maps and assets from the multiplayer mode. And then they just maybe added a few characters that they're already going to put into it and made it kind of story mode that is about...
And yet, to us that seems like a pile of pants. But they genuinely obviously put effort into it. They hired all these people for mocap. They rendered all these cutscenes. And they probably thought they were pretty proud of themselves to do that.
It's the biggest change from the last game, is that they put in a story mode, which is about 4 or 5 hours long. It isn't that long, but it took them 2 years to do that. 120 people, and that's the biggest change we can imagine, is that they put in a 4 or 5 hour campaign, which...
But the difference is, because people are always so salty about, Battlefront 2 2005 was such a good game, they got it right. Those people were working with different technologies, and the campaign in that had no cutscenes. You got a wall of text before every mission where you had a clone trooper reading it, as far as I remember, and a load of stills and images. So, I mean, to a certain degree, we're looking at that game with rose-tinted glasses. Obviously, the gameplay in it was much better, in my opinion. But it's a lot of work to make a game. And release dates are only there they're only there for the public, as far as I'm concerned. Just to let us know that they're actually thinking about the game.
Yeah.
They're actually working on the game.
To get people hyped. And then we have, very famous examples of stuff like Final Fantasy 15, which went through like a 12-year cycle.
Yeah.
Like, we have been hearing about that game for a very, very, very long time. Actually, no, not even. It might be longer than 12 years, because we had some stuff about, or even Duke Nukem Forever, or stuff like that. Or we know one game that was constantly worked on, which was Too Human. Which was...
Yeah, Gary, hang on, stop there, stop. Podcast, stop. Someone's coming into the house. I'm gonna just clap. But someone's coming into the house, and I'm just gonna pause it there for a moment. We'll keep it running, but just so you know, because I don't know how much noise they're gonna make. But just leave it there for the moment. Just remember that thought, and when we're editing it, you just bring it back to there. But I'd rather say it now as they're coming in than as the door opens.
Yeah.
You know? Better safe than sorry. So you're talking about 2 humans, so we'll talk about that when you get done. My father was on holidays, and he's just decided to return home. Yes. He's coming in the door as I talk. I'm sure this microphone can't pick it up, but that one will. So.
Alright.
Yeah. Unfortunate. Unfortunate indeed. Wait for him to come in. Yes, they're talking nice and loudly. Good. I apologize for this intermission, Gary.
That's alright.
I thought you were apologizing to me. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I can tell you about the plans for Saturday.
Sunday.
A lot of people are, and I'd like to see you here, but a lot of people are going to... Or, sorry, Sunday, yes, apologies. A lot of people are going to one of the pubs across the road for the last few drinks, because a lot of people can't make it into town. So I think they'd be very happy to see you there. If you want to make your way in, I can give you a text when to come in, and you can just hop on the bus at O'Connell Street, and then sure. And then myself and Dave, at least, are going into town. At the very least, just us. So it could be a tidbit night. Yeah.
Oh, is it? I mean, will I go to the pub?
Yes. Would you like to?
Yeah.
Would it be too much hassle?
Wait. So, what do you mean? You and Dave are going to town for what?
For drinks afterwards.
Are you not going into the pub?
I am. After the pub. Sunday, so the pub will close relatively early.
So you mean after the... So say hello to everybody and goodbye everybody, and then it'll just be the few of us.
Yes.
Personal friends.
So it'll be a few drinks, maybe a few drinks at the pub.
Yeah.
And then when the pub closes, we'll head into town.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, and then I'll crash on at your house. Yeah.
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 Oh, sweet. And I don't work the next morning.
We'll do a drunk tidbit cast.
Wait, are you actually going to drink alcohol?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to compromise my my values just for the sake of a podcast. I wouldn't make you eat meat for the sake of a podcast. But would you eat meat for the sake of a podcast?
Do you want to try this crazy item?
Mystery item?
Meat.
That would be a very shitty thing to do.
It would be incredibly shitty to do,
yeah. Okay. Give it a clap there. I'm going to give it a clap as well, and we'll continue on. You can talk about 2 humans.
3, 2, 1. Clap.
So.
Okay, so... Right. 2 Human is a game that took 7 years to make. That is 7 years, and that game was constantly being revised, and even after it came out, it had to eventually be... That game was like banned on several things just because of the whole Unreal Engine licensing, where it used Unreal Engine 3.
They left themselves in an unfortunate position in regards to how long is too long, first of all, and I think they tried to do too many things with the mechanics.
Yeah.
And they overlooked the story.
That game was like, there were like hundreds or like thousands of different types of weapons, all unique with their own like different names and stuff, and all the like different attributes. It did a lot with that game, but ultimately like there's stuff like the environments are large, but they look very similar to each other, and all pretty much empty corridors. And it's like, oh,
it was very it was a very hollow game.
Yeah,
from what
so
I remember. Insofar as like all the bells and whistles were very nice, but there was no core substance.
Yeah, so the actual like character customization was, I thought, very interesting. That was the hook for me. The different like play styles, being able to use different types of weapons and armor and abilities, but then it's just that the enemies are almost the same for the entire game. The design slightly changed. That's it. It's the same enemies the entire game. Then the environments are the same layouts. It's just different colored. Like, oh, in this world it's dark and it's black and hollow. And then another one, it's kind of lava at the sides, but it's still the same ground. It's just a different color, different details, but the same thing. It's everything for some reason is straight and even, and then there's ramps, and it just felt like the same track every time, but with different instances happening. And that was a part, but the actual like world, as in like the story part, seemed kind of cool. The idea of like these are gods, but they're technologically advanced, and that's why they're gods.
It was kind of like what Thor did. You know, to you, magic and technology are two different things. To us, they're one and the same. You know.
Yeah.
But it was based on Norse mythology.
Yeah, all the characters. So you were Balder. You were
Balder.
So you were Balder, and then you had people like Thor, and Loki was one of the guys, and you know all these characters, and they're really cool, and all of their things were like their technology was a part of like whichever one they went into, because Loki obviously was doing illusions and holograms, because he's a trickster, and it was kind of cool. But then also the game ended on a cliffhanger. The story full on ends on you kill a guy. I think it was like, again, spoilers for Too Human. Fucking hell. But anyway, that game like ends. I think I believe it was Loki like dying, but he didn't actually die, or it was a whole kind of fucking worms. That game just ended on this cliffhanger, and it annoyed me so much. It's like, all right.
I don't think any game should ever end on a cliffhanger.
And now it's like, and now the war is starting, and then you just know that Silicon Knights shut down during this game. It was like
it all begins now, but we're out of money.
Yeah,
so
that game was down because they were in a lawsuit, and then the whole thing with licensing. That was a problem for them, but that.
But on that note, I genuinely think that games shouldn't end on cliffhangers. Ever.
There are a few games to do that. Actually, going back to a game we already talked about, Assassin's Creed, the first one, intentionally ended on a cliffhanger because they wanted enough of a buzz that they could make a second game. I think it was meant to be.
But their cliffhanger, their cliffhanger wasn't so much a cliffhanger as more of a, you should really research this stuff on your own. Look at this wall. There's so much information in this wall. Have a look at this wall. It's really cool. That's how I found it.
Well, no, it was definitely a cliffhanger. No, as in like story-wise, it was a cliffhanger, because I still remember it being at the end of Assassin's Creed and having this thought and talking about it with my brother and father, and them having the same thing, because what happens at the end of Assassin's Creed is that all your story ends. Like, like it ends in a way that's like, oh, this is like an ending. And then it goes back to Desmond. He goes back to Desmond and just her telling him that I'm going to lock the door, don't let anybody in, and then Desmond going into the bathroom and seeing all this text left by somebody who previously was there, and just be all these secrets. What does it all mean? And then the credits roll, and it's like, fuck you. So it's still not as good as the I think it was Brotherhood that had this woman talking to you going, Desmond, and Ezio going, who is Desmond?
Who is Desmond?
That was the end of Assassin's Creed 2 after you fight the Pope for the Apple of Eden.
After you have a boxing match with
After you have a bare knuckle brawl with the Pope over the apple of the Apple of Eden. Yes, that is the sentence that is canon.
Yeah.
Then you have a god speak to you that you happen to be descendant of, and it speaks to the player through Ezio, through Desmond. It's very strange, but that game also had a lot of promise. With the whole Desmond story is what I'm talking about, but which is kind of like by the wayside. God, we're trailing off so much.
I don't care. It's good.
I don't know
it's
why.
Good for us.
Yeah. These are that series.
Yeah, they've really rebooted it.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah,
I'm very happy with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm still playing it. I'm 70 hours in. And the finish line is nowhere in sight. I know people have finished it very quickly and they've just powered through the story, but I want to see everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to take the chance that the story will maybe take me to an island. I want to go to that island now. Because, that'd be pretty cool to go to. So I'm going to go look at it.
One thing I'm actually curious about is, how are the mythological creatures?
Okay, so I haven't fought the Minotaur. Just as a thing, it's a side quest. I haven't fought him. I've seen a still of him. Actually, I saw about a 3-second clip of him picking up his axe or something like that. But other than that, I haven't seen any other mythological creatures. I've fought some really tough animals, like I suppose you call them legendary animals, that a daughter of Artemis sent me to get. Oh, basically a huntress. She sent me to go kill them. They're fairly tough.
I've heard about the mythological creatures that you won't actually get them in the main quest or side quests. How you find them is actually you go to an area and it unlocks them, which I thought was interesting when I heard about that. Is that you actually have to go to an area, and then I don't know if it's rumors or you happen upon it, but basically you have to go to the area to unlock it. You can't just go to like places and hope that people will talk about them, or that it's going to be like a part of the main quest. It's actually just...
Well, there is a side quest to kill these legendary animals all around Greece, and it gives you a set of armor, a set of legendary armor. So I'm not too sure if it's the similar thing. Maybe it's a case of because when I go to an area, I discover everything. Any question mark on the map, I'm going to it.
Yeah. I've heard that there's like a plot line or something that goes from you go to an area and then it kind of unlocks that, oh, there's been things happening here, and then you go and that is, and then it kind of leads you on this trail from creature to creature, myth to myth.
It sounds really cool.
It does.
It probably starts with the Minotaur. That's probably it. That's probably why I have that in my inventory, my quest inventory. To be honest.
Yeah.
But back on point, maybe as a little closing statement. Your final statement, your final thought on release dates.
Release dates are a business thing. They're not a thing we need. Obviously, they are important, so we know that when things are coming out. But I think companies have a tendency to just kind of put them down, rather than actually mean them. Like it's just a thing that we're gonna put that. Like, you see a lot of games, especially indie games, who when they put down a release date, unless it's been something that's fucking kickstarted, because they'll never do it on time.
Or those ones that are early access, like Divinity.
Yeah. If you have something, but those games are also come with the knowledge that it will take a long time for them to. It will take years.
That you're basically a dev tester on the game.
Yeah, that is a way for them to finish the game faster. To get more data from having in so many different consoles and players. before the official 1.0 version of the game. It's release dates are those things that very few get it right. Usually the people who do get it right are actually indie studios, only because indie studios will, if it's not Kickstarter or crowdfunded,
indie studios also aren't being pressured for
exactly.
release
It is not really a business thing. They're doing it because they want to make a game for the love of making the game. So when it comes out and they're ready, and then it'll go, yeah, it's going to come out this time. Why? Because, well, I know, because I've been working on it for years now, and I know when my game's going to be done. Whereas the other one is, there are
2077.
So many different people. There are so many different avenues to go down. So many different companies involved with mainstream titles that...
So many moving pieces.
Oh my god, it's difficult. I mean, like, for example, Red Dead has been worked on for the last... I mean, it's been the longest time that Rockstar haven't put out a game. It's been 5 years. And Red Dead has been 8 different studios inside Rockstar Games has been working on this game. 8 studios.
Gary, I told you, Rockstar is a sinkhole, and we're not going to fall into it, are we?
Fall down what sinkhole?
You're too deep in.
Thank you very much for listening to the Tidbit Cast. My name is Gary, and this was
Colm.
And if you ever want to listen to us anymore, you know, if you enjoyed this, you can see us and hear us on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram, and you can, you know, come back here if wherever you listen to it on. I mean, if you're hearing us here or on YouTube, subscribe, support us there, comment, like us on
Google
everything.
machine.
On the Google machine, you can find us Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, or kind of anywhere you can find music or audio. Perfect sound.
You can find me anywhere, pretty much.
We also have links to our personal profiles or our handles on our different social media if you ever want to go. Just look for Tidbit Cast. Look for Tidbit Cast on anything. And
and we're going to be starting on Twitch as well shortly. We're on and off. We're still experimenting with it. But if you happen to see us on Twitch, do have a look at us. Tell us how we can improve. We're very interested to hear how we can improve in anything. And if you have any opinions on anything, you can email us at talktotidbit at gmail.com.
That is
talktotidbit at gmail.com.
talktotidbit at gmail.com.
Please.
Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Goodbye.
Bye.